Howdy folks, welcome back to another video. According to the internet, the water pump on this 86 Voyager 1200 Kawasaki is non-rebuildable. But in my opinion, nothing is non-rebuildable. I think we're going to be able to give this one a shot. And the reason why is, I reached out to my buddy Taz at AZV65. He says he's got a rebuild kit as far as the mechanical seal kit goes for this water pump. I'm not sure if this is 100% bad or not. But being that it had all that brown diarrhea rust, maybe even some sort of stalactites, maybe some organic material in there that hadn't even been identified by modern chemistry and science at this point, who knows? It looked pretty bad. Didn't smell good either. So I suspect this mechanical seal is probably going to fail. Or maybe it's failed already. So we're going to get this one apart in this video and we're going to rebuild it. Now I'm not going to do a step-by-step instruction thing. This is going to be kind of quick. We're going to go right through it. Set it up, tell you what I'm doing it, and we're moving on to the next operation. I have another video on my channel rebuilding a Honda water pump using one of Taz's AZV65.com's, that is, rebuild kits. You can look at that one. I'll link to it in the description. So let's get right to it on this water pump. Step 1, remove the oil seal on the back of the pump. Next step is we're going to see if our Honda water pump special tool assembly here that I made for the Honda water pumps is going to work on this one. This is actually a little smaller. The bearing must be larger in a water pump for a Kawasaki versus the Honda as far as the actual bearing shaft goes. I drilled a 12 mil hole and then I relieved it a little bit to make sure it would only be hitting on the outside of this bore. Before we do any pushing, we got to do some measuring. We got to make sure we know this offset here, the stick out, is very, very important. This is 555 thou. Ones on the Hondas are about 475, so something like that. So we'll go ahead and write that down. I've already checked it a couple more times off camera. Now we got to go set this over in the press and get ready to hopefully not destroy it. Yeah. Show you real quick why I destroyed this water pump and it exploded when I tried to press the bearing out. This bearing is completely different from the Honda. The Honda has a main bearing assembly that's attached to the shaft. It's made into the shaft. So that's really one piece. In this case, you have a three-piece. You have a bearing up front, and you have a bearing at the rear, and of course the shaft itself. So I did not know that until I put it on the lathe and cut this thing open. So I just started turning and whittling it down until I could get an opening. I figured I'd be going up against a big bearing assembly, and then all of a sudden, whoa, why did this thing open up like this? You can see it's a big gaping area. And then I realized, oh, there you go. So why did it come apart? Why did it crush, blow up? Well, this bearing is where I was pushing on right there, and there's a shoulder on this side. So the bearing is pressed in from the rear against that shoulder. So naturally, if I'm pushing against that bearing, I'm transferring that force against the shoulder, and ergo against the body of the water pump. It would never go because it's not designed to go. So what are we going to do about this? I've ordered 2 replacement water pumps from eBay. They were relatively inexpensive. I'm going to use the best one with a rebuild kit that Taz has shipped me for a Kawasaki pump. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that replacement, one of the 2 replacement water pumps, and disassemble it correctly. And how that's going to work is this thing will be set up just like it was before when I was trying to push it out. This is, of course, the drive side, and this is the driven side where the impeller sits. So we're going to actually just push the shaft out of the pump, not the entire bearing out of the pump. There's no reason to do that. But that is the back side of the mechanical seal right there. This is the front side of the fixed part. The spinny part is on the impeller itself. And both of these sides of the mechanical seal are not in healthy shape. You can see that this was prone, this was going to fail if it hadn't failed already anyway. So we had a pretty scrap pump, you know, to start with. So what I'm going to do here off camera is I want to get this mechanical seal out and take a look. It has to go in from the outside, so this has got to be a straight bore here. So that's the reason why it happened. We're going to rebuild it correctly with a replacement one and a new seal kit from Taz. But by the end of this video, we'll have this one done and getting ready to install, and I'll kind of just show it to you, and then we'll shove it on the bike. Okay, as I said in the intro, we're going to go ahead and try to rebuild this water pump to replace the one that I destroyed. This just came today, and although it looks really well inside there, looks nice. Yeah, the bearings are shot in it. Probably this rear one, you can see there's a bunch of rust and shit in there. So we got no choice but to push this out. Now, since we know how this works now, there's not a big body bearing inside there. There's a bearing in the back and in the front. All right, I got it all lined up. And I made sure again that it's clear. Let's see what happens when we push on the shaft. Oh yeah, there we go. She's going. Oh yeah, now we're down at the bearing. I gotta come up with something that I can stick in there to push it the rest of the way. All right, here's the shaft and the impeller. The spinny side of the mechanical seal, the ceramic side, I guess it is. And on the inside here, we have the other side of the mechanical seal, which we're gonna have to try to dig out of there somehow. To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure how we're gonna do that, but we're gonna figure it out here. I didn't show it because I wasn't sure it was gonna work, but I just used this slide hammer and that rear bearing come right out. Now that rear bearing feels good, it's the front bearing that's bad. I tried a little pressure, it doesn't seem to want to go, so I'm just going to heat it a little bit. I'm just going to hit with a little bit of heat. The front bearing is scrap anyway, so shouldn't give us any issue when it comes to that. But remember, those mechanical seals have some Loctite that's made into it. You know, the kind that's dried and then it activates when it gets pushed against something. There it goes, see, look at that. Now it's coming straight out. Perfect, just a teeny bit of heat. This is what I want to see, right there. And there's a shoulder inside there, so we know where to push the bearing to. So essentially, this is machined in such a manner where outside the major diameter for the bearing back here and there both go up against the shoulder inside there. So that works out really well. We don't have to worry about any offset. You see the little bit of blue that's left over there. Here's our bearing and mechanical seal. So yeah, that's the way to do it. You see how bad this bearing is. So I said before about this mechanical seal. Obviously, this mechanical seal was failing, because it got water behind there and took the bearing out. Now, like I said, the rear bearing that I just used a slide hammer on is good. And I can take one of the bearings off the water pump that I destroyed. Both of those are good. Even though I heated that up pretty good. I'm going to pop off one of these caps, or maybe both of them, on the bearing I use, maybe in both of these bearings, and clean them a little bit, maybe throw a little bit more grease in them. Because they're just a regular seal bearing. Just because they're inside of a water pump makes no difference. So that's what we're going to end up doing here. I'm going to do all that off camera, but I want to show you how I got this apart. Nothing is destroyed. There it goes. Okay. Yeah, she's pretty grody in there. I just used a teensy-weensy bit of heat just to loosen that up and it come right out. And it doesn't look like this one will need to be resized. So it essentially drew this. This metal is now drawn. Here's a good example of a side-by-side of that. The one on the left is the impeller from the VFR 750. How this happens is when you push the shaft out from underneath or inside the impeller, it can actually pull that metal down depending on the level of support, because inside that space is the mechanical seal, the ceramic side of the mechanical seal. If that's been removed for some reason, this will definitely happen. The one on the right is the Kawasaki pump impeller that I did, and that mechanical seal was still in there, and it also depends on how you fixture it. So I had a really good flat surface and was able to put that in a special tool and push that out without any distortion. How you repair it is better explained if you watch the VFR 750 water pump repair video, which I'll link to in the description, but essentially you flip the impeller over using some sort of a special tool fixture that you have to usually make for this. Then you can use a socket or something flat that fits that diameter where the mechanical seal goes. In this case, I'm using a special tool, and all you have to do is use a press to push it back into a flat shape. So again, watch that video and it explains the whole thing. I'd like to go over some pump specifics here and differences. Even though they're the same number on the pump, there's a couple of differences. Now you've seen this one disassembled properly. So these two bearings here, one goes in the back, presses up against that shoulder. One goes in the front, presses up against that shoulder. And the shaft simply gets pushed through, actually this way, with the drive slot this way down through. I talked to Taz here at AZV65 yesterday. He is sending me what he believes is the appropriate seal kit for this. I'm going to go over a couple of differences I found. Here's his card if you want to look him up. Super nice guy. I'll leave it right there. So anyway, he's sending me the proper seal kit for it. So as far as this pump goes, the replacement one is pretty much identical to the old one. There was a couple of small differences. First of all, this is the drive shaft for this pump, the one that came in. Does have a little corrosion around right here, but that's behind where the impeller presses on and in front of any issue or any concerns with the other bearing or the mechanical seal. That was just an open area that got some corrosion on, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to reuse this. It actually is slightly longer than the original shaft that came out of the original pump, okay? It's slightly longer, about 50 thou longer when I measured it up. But the stick out's the same. You can tell, I measured the stick out on the old one. I honestly didn't measure it on the new one because I figured it was the same. Probably should have done that, but it doesn't really matter because you can see the witness marks from where those bearings sat. That's exactly the same. So I'm going to go with the stick out on the original pump because the pump bodies are the same pretty much. We can test that as well. I mean, we have an intact rear section here. We can measure down to that step and to this step and see if they're the same, which we'll do momentarily. Let me switch these back. So if we're going to use the same shaft, the stick out's the same, and the impeller came off of this should be fine. Let's talk about mechanical seals. This is the mechanical seal that came out of this one, the replacement pump. This is the mechanical seal that came out of the pump I blew up. Now, you can see there is a difference in size on these mechanical seals. Now, this mechanical seal on the left, going with this one here, the old pump, is exactly the same size as one of these, which is a Honda replacement mechanical seal kit that you would use like in a VFR 750 and similar. It's the same one. I have a brand new one sitting here, well, almost brand new, but it's absolutely usable. My initial intention was to use that seal in this pump, because I measured it while it was still installed and I went, wow, it looks like the same size. And it sure as hell is. This one is slightly smaller. So in other words, this bore here will not fit the larger seal, unfortunately. Otherwise, I just press that bitch in right now, just put some Loctite on it, blue Loctite. This smaller one is what fits in there. So that's what goes inside there. So like I said, he's sending me a new mechanical seal kit. This side of it's the same. That goes in the impeller, but the main body of the seal, again, is a different size. Quick sidebar on the mechanical seal's sizes. I am not certain, and Taz really wasn't either, as to why the early pumps have a larger seal than the later pumps. The original pump, of course, is from an 86, because this is an 86 model year bike, but this replacement pump you see here in front of you is from a 1999. And you can also tell there's a little difference in the shading or the color of the aluminum, and that appears to be some sort of an anti-corrosive coating that they also changed over as far as the design goes and engineering on the later pumps. So it stands to reason they also changed the size of the seal for some reason as well. So if you're going to rebuild one of these yourself, you're going to have to know what year bike the pump came off of. Certainly make some measurements either before or during or certainly after the disassembly process. All you got to do is get with Taz and he'll be able to hook you up with the right size seal. So this is the actual ring that seal came out of. The old pump, it's still intact. This is what this fits inside here, presses in. The importance of having this around is, I have an alternative here. Let's say that he sends me the seal, it's the wrong one. Well, I know this dimension because I can measure it. I already measured that dimension, which is, let's see, this dimension where this is the old pump now, is 1.180 thou imperial. I could easily chuck this up, indicate that bore in, and just bore this out up to that. It's a small little lip. So we would pick up the depth of that lip, set a 0 on the Z of the DRO, and just bore this out until we have this diameter, which is the crush diameter for this larger Honda seal. That is always an alternative, but I'm going to wait for him to send me the kit when the kit comes in. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the right one, because he said that a lot of these Kawasaki seals are just a smidge smaller, and they are indeed a smidge smaller. So that's the difference between the seals here. Otherwise, the pumps are pretty much identical. Let's go ahead and measure that depth thing, though. I haven't done that yet, actually. I want to see if there's any difference. That's 746 or so. And this one is, let's say 751, 752, close enough. 748, 750, they're roughly 3/4 of an inch, 0.750 imperial. So that's the same. So we know that part's the same. Unfortunately, there's nothing else I can measure on this to determine whether or not it's the same. This is the old impeller that came off of this one. You can see how cruddy that inside mechanical seal was. This pump is pretty much shot anyway, but I could have saved it. I absolutely could have saved this pump. It's totally my fault. Gotten this pump apart, if had I known properly how to do it properly, and installed in virtually a brand new Honda seal that would fit it fine, and install the mating section in that impeller, and this thing would be all back together right now. So this is completely my fault. So as such, I'm not going to charge the customer for this replacement pump. I'm going to go ahead and eat this, because I could have saved this, and I would have only charged them a couple bucks for the seal, and that's about it. And I wouldn't even probably charge them any labor for it, because it's kind of fun to try this stuff out. But those are the subtle differences that you might find on some of these pumps if you choose to do them yourself. I don't know how to tell you to determine whether or not you have a shaft and 2 bearings or a bearing assembly inside a pump like this. I don't know any way to know that. You know, I guess you take a shot. You know, if you know what you got, then fine. But if you don't, then what you're going to have to do is just take a shot. I think if I was going to do this over, what I would do is I'd say, well, what's the least destructive? I'd probably start pushing on the end of the shaft to see if it moved. And if it wouldn't move with a reasonable amount of force, then I know that it's the big bearing assembly, because these are not a really hard fit. They're an interference fit only. Maybe slightly more than an interference fit. Maybe a very light press fit. They don't take a lot of force to push out. I think that's what I would do first. If you have one of these and you're trying to figure out which one it is, that's what I would recommend. That's what I wanted to cover on this. So the next parts, we're going to be putting the pump back together really quick, and then we'll be ready to put back on the bike. It is time we finally fix this water pump debacle that we caused. Wait a minute, who's we? I caused this guy. Okay, so we're gonna fix this and do it right, and it's gonna be fine. I don't have the mechanical seal yet. It's coming this afternoon or during the mail, whenever the mail comes today. But I'm confident it's the right one. It's got 2 bearings here, and I've popped these caps off. I talked to Taz about this first. He said he does this all the time, and I do it too, like on wheel bearings. But I pop the caps off, clean these out. There's nothing wrong with them. Put a little grease in them. Put the caps back on. Bob's your uncle, and they turn real nice. And so we've got a front and a back, as opposed to the other 2. This is the one that came out of, I forgot which pump. Was it this pump or, yeah, it was this pump, the replacement pump. And she's pretty crusty. That was the one right behind the mechanical seal. So this was the front one. And I believe this was the rear one. It may have been. I don't know if this was the one out of the old pump or not, but the problem with this one is it does have some rocking. These 2 are solid. These 2 are in really good shape. All right, folks, we're going to push some bearings in, and I tried a couple things off camera, and I screwed up a couple things, not permanently, but I started actually to film some clips. I deleted them because what I did was I put the front bearing in, I put the back bearing in, I shoved the shaft through. This is a spacer that I'm using on the back here to keep that bearing from coming out with the shaft. The problem was when you put the shaft through with both bearings in place, you end up axial loading the bearings. Just like on a motorcycle axle, if you drive one bearing in on one side and then you drive the other ones in too hard, it loads it up axially. That's what was happening. The thing hardly would even spin. I took it apart real quick. I even tried some Loctite, which was a dumb idea because that takes up too much space. We're going to put the front bearing in first, which is this guy right here. Then we're going to put the shaft in from the front. We're going to push the shaft through using this special tool, which is a depth gauge, 556 thou for the stick out. So once that shaft is in and the stick out is set, then we'll turn it over. We'll just put the shaft in this special tool, and then we'll push the rear bearing over the shaft, and it should not change that offset. That should limit the possibility of it having axial load, at least the way I think it was occurring. So this is the side that goes out the back. So we're going to push it down through this side, which is what I did before. It went fine. This part's no problem. I'm going to push it down until it seats at the of the block, and then we'll put that tool in there to do the depth. We're flush up here. We're just going to put this right here and let it go inside there. We're going to let it slip it in on its own. All right, start coming through and just align this thing as it goes in. We're at depth now, which we'll measure. I think we need to measure that now. Yeah, it's about 544. So we got to go a little bit further. We need to go to 556. Try that. 557. Ha, look at that. Perfect. So 555, 556, 557. So we're spot on the money as far as the depth goes based on my initial measurements. So what we do now is we take this guy and we just put this guy here on one. Now like the shaft can't move now. It's already started over the shaft, so you said shaft. All right. Yeah, 556, 556 and a half, 556 on the nose actually. It made it better. Who knew? So my original thought with this tool was when I was driving the thing through the other way, through both bearings, I made this out of some steel scrap, which is the exact depth of the bearing into that shoulder between the bearing and the outside once the bearing's in. That way when you drive it through from this side, it won't push the bearing back out. And what we saw from this example, it's not going to do that anyway probably, at least not this front one. That feels okay. If it feels a little bindy, like it's got, bindy, is that a word? Like it's got some axial load, just take yourself a little ball peen or something and give it a smack. This shaft is harder than a coffin nail, so be careful on the back side because that's slotted as you can see, but you give it a little smack one way or the other and she loosens right up because it just kind of relieves that internal stresses. It lets the bearings, the internal side, the internal part of the bearings kind of relax. You know, when you have two separate bearings like this and you run a shaft through it and it's a good press fit, that's just going to happen. A little smack like that works, and I double checked the offset and it's within a half thou of what it was, so it probably moved about a half thou. So the next phase that we're into right now is the mechanical seal, and it is the correct one. It looks like the correct one at least. You can see that's pretty much the right size. It's just a smidge smaller than the Honda one, just like Taz said. Now speaking of Taz, I don't know the part number of this, so don't ask me. If you need a Kawasaki pump seal like this, azv65.com. Go to the contact section and reach out to Taz and he'll fix you up. The next phase is we got to press the mechanical seal in. I'm going to do that off camera because I have videos on my channel already on these water pumps from this point on. The only reason why I filmed this part is because it's different than the Honda ones that are already on my channel with that one shaft body with the bearings made into it. So since we've got it to this point and I've done the offset, I'm just going to get the rest of this done off camera, including putting on the impeller. Again, that's already on a video, so I'll link to those in the description and get the other side of the mechanical seal in here. We'll get this all put together and I'll show you that product before we put the cover on. So this really feels good. They're supposed to be a little on the snug side because that mechanical seal has a certain amount of friction as far as the drag, if you will. But what you're supposed to do is just run these around a little bit by hand, according to what Taz says, and then kind of break in those two seals, go back and forth. Do it periodically over the next like 24 hours or so, because I'm not going to be putting this back in today anyway, and I'm not going to put the cover on yet. Ultimate test here is to make sure that if the offset's good and everything's on properly, to kind of act as alignment pins for us, and we should be real good here as far as alignment. We shouldn't be hitting, because that's awfully close. The impeller's very, very close to the cover. This looks really good. I'm real happy with it so far. And once we get her back together and put her on the bike, then that'll be proof positive right there. But it feels about right. It feels about normal from a couple of Honda pumps that I've done, and so I'm good with that. So the last operation, which I'll do off camera again, because that's all covered on video. I do have a new seal for this. I think it's right here, actually. One of these two is the new seal. There's another one in that box. That is not a new seal. Well, neither of them may be brand new, but they're going to be good enough. And so I'll clean this up and put a little Honda Bond on that and get that shoved in. And that way, and remember, they do go this way. Everybody starts screaming when I show this on camera, but they do go this way. They go with the opening toward the outside, not this way. That's just the way it is. If you take a look at any of these pumps when they come off of a bike, they come off just like that, with this seal just like that. All right, guys, this is in the books and it works. I tested it on the bike. It goes in, the slot goes over the little flat piece on the oil pump that drives it. It sits nice and flush. Everything's good. It turns good. I got the oil seal in. I've got some grease on the oil seal. Yes, the oil seal goes that way, as I said before. Please don't comment that it doesn't, because it does on these water pumps. It turns, from what I remember from doing the Honda water pumps, pretty much the same. They're a little stiff when you first get them done, all right? It's just the way they are. It's a water pump. If you get an automotive water pump and put it on, it's the same way when you first get it. You're like, wow, that thing barely turns, but it's the way it's supposed to be. I'm confident that this is going to work good. This will go on the bike tomorrow, and we'll get some other stuff done, because you got to see video number 2 on the Voyager to catch up to where this takes over as far as getting back on the bike. Special thanks to Taz at azv65.com, Carl Cook. Super great guy, totally bailed my ass out on this one. And I could have accommodated, because I had a Honda seal. It didn't fit, but I can make it fit. Hell, I got a lathe, I can make anything. But I didn't need to, because he was able to send me the correct seal. I don't know what the seal part number is, like I said before. If you need any motorcycle water pump work, or any parts or anything like that, AZV65. That's Alpha Zebra Victor 65.com. And go to the contact area section and send him an email. He'll get back to you right away and help you out. So this is great. I'm real happy that this is all ready to go and done. And I was getting really worried about this. So, all right. So until next time, which should be video number 2 on this Voyager. It's coming out here pretty soon. I was pretty much stuck until I got this done. So watch for that video. To do that, you guys stick around. Subscribe, ring the bell, share, like, do all that stuff. Helps me out immensely. Doesn't cost you a cent, I promise. And then you hopefully get notified when I put more crap like this up and more videos on the Voyager. Till next time, as always, don't just repair, restore. Thanks for watching, and catch you on next video.